Welcome everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you for joining me. This is question and answer session number 3, so there's 2 more of these. If you're interested, I'll put links to them in the description below. I've got 40 questions that came in. You guys provided some really amazing questions, some in-depth ones. I'm going to see how I can fit them all in here. This is going to be a marathon session to try to get it in a reasonable amount of time. So 40 questions relating to topics of music, then channel related and personal. Obviously the bulk are related to music, and just to catch people up who might be new to my channel. I am an architect by day, hence the reason I'm wearing the shirt in this video, but of course a music lover 24/7. I listen to it whenever I can. I've got over 9,000 CDs, so my life is filled with music. Having just hit 4,000 subscribers, so again, thank you guys. I'm doing this video as that thank you to give you the opportunity to ask me questions and have me directly respond to those things. But of course, before we go any further, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also comment, like, do those things as well. They all help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this, with question and answer session number 3. And so as I always say at the beginning of these things, I'm going to do my best to pronounce these names as best I can. And I'm going to apologize up front because I'm sure I won't get them all right, but I'm going to do my best. All right, kicking things off with music-related questions. I have 36 of these, and first up is Spaghetti Lee. I've always loved that name. He's got one of the best usernames on here. He asks a really good, poignant question. Has the pandemic changed how it is that I purchase music? And yes, it certainly has. I used to go to my local record stores, on my lunch break or after work, and that stopped. Those all closed up. So I turned more to buying online, but even some of those stores went out of business and stopped selling. So I had to turn to other retailers, and I branched out into more importing from Japan. They were doing 2-day overnight mail on things. You had to pay like 15 bucks for it, but I could get Japanese import CDs that way, so I did a bunch of that. And I also turned more to eBay. People that were mailing out from their homes and stuff. Where people weren't at businesses, I could still get things through eBay. So I did a lot of eBay buying and stuff. And then he also asks, when live music comes back, will I continue to purchase the same way? And I think that's in relation to the idea that, not spending the money on live concerts would then shift back to that away from my music buying. And no, I will definitely continue to buy music the same way. I will spend the same amount of money on music. That never really changed. I just ended up actually saving money, not going to concerts. Okay, the second question in here comes from Mila, and I'm going to do my best to pronounce this last name, Prazajaminski. I apologize if I said that wrong. She asked the question, do you have any other music-related collections like band t-shirts, patches, buttons, etc.? And yes, I do. I love to collect music memorabilia, and you can see one of them behind me there, the Kicks Bank, and it was to promote a song called Girl Money, and so of course you could put your money in it. I've also got this thing here, Rolling Stones, to promote their album Flashpoint. It's a big set of matches. And then I've got the Black Crowes Southern Harmony and Musical Companion hymnal to promote the album. And it's got all the lyrics and everything in here, but also in the back of it, sheet music. So it's done up like an old hymnal. And then Tesla to promote their album Psychotic Supper. They had these menus made up from like diners. And that was pretty cool. So yeah, I've got a bunch of these things. I have boxes and boxes of this stuff, so maybe one time I'll do a video on it if enough people are interested. Next up, Will Hisung and Physical Format Rock and Roll also asked the question, do you have any plans to attend concerts later this year? And all of the concerts that I was going to go see, like Ringo Starr and Roger Waters, have been postponed until 2022, so I currently don't have any plans, although Genesis just announced their reunion tour, which is playing Madison Square Garden, so I may buy tickets to them. I've never seen Genesis in concert. I have seen Phil Collins, though. And he also asked the question, where would I like to travel to? So before the pandemic and lockdown, I was planning to go out to Colorado. I really like the mountains and scenery out there. So I may plan that and go forward with it. Sean Morrison asked the question, how do you feel about bands performing with only one original member or not any original members? And so we got 2 examples of those currently going on right now, like LA Guns, to feature Steve Riley, the drummer, and Kelly Nichols, the bassist. So I still consider both those guys original members, but I know Steve Riley did not drum on the first album, but he played on every album thereafter for the next, I think, 27 years or something. And Kelly Nichols was an original member, and he played on the debut album, or, in the first 3 or 4 albums, give or take. Came back for some reunions throughout the different years. So I'm okay with it as long as the music continues in the vein of what the original band was, and it all comes down to the music. If the music is good, I'm good. And then you've got an artist like, or a band like Quiet Riot, where no original members. For a long time, after lead singer Kevin DuBrow died, the drummer Frankie Banali restarted the band. He's part of the most famous lineup from 1983 Metal Health album, but the band actually put out albums back starting in 1977, and Frankie wasn't part of that. So there was actually no original members for some time now, and he recently passed away, which has sparked that question again because the band is continuing on. But they've got the last living lineup of the band from when Kevin DuBrow was in it. They've now added Jizzy Pearl from Love Hate on vocals. I'm a big fan of his. So to me, it's kind of like a super group now. And they've got Chuck Wright on bass, who actually plays 2 songs on the 1983 Metal Health album, and he plays on the song Metal Health. So he was in the band before Rudy Sarzo, decided not to stay, left the band, and then Rudy Sarzo came in. So to me, you still got an original member there, at least from the most famous era. Okay, Heather from the 80s Live Here asked the question, how do your friends and family respond to your ever-growing 9,000 plus CD collection? And case in point, or simply put, they think I'm insane. Who would want to have that much of any one thing, I guess? But you know what? They do see how much joy it brings me and the passion that I have for it, and they support me fully in it. No one, makes fun of me or gives me a hard time or anything about it. So I have to say I really appreciate that. I did date a girl once, though, who really tried to talk me into switching over to only streaming. And she had a real issue with me having all this collection. I guess it just bothered her, but hey, I'm not with her anymore, so. All right, moving on. Greatest Music Fan asks, favorite albums? Van Halen. For me, I'm picking 5150. I listen to that album more than any others. I was from the 80s and I grew up with the Sammy Hagar era, so that's probably why I'm going with it. But I did teeter-totter between that and 1984, which was the first Van Halen album I bought. Also wants to know my favorite Pantera album. I'm going to go with Reinventing the Steel. But if you asked me back in the day, I would have picked Far Beyond Driven. I always loved that album. But as the years have gone by, I've pulled out Reinventing the Steel more, maybe because I wasn't listening to radio at that time. I don't really know any radio hits off of it, although I know what was released to radio. And I tend to lean towards albums that have the least known material on it for me. But Reinventing the Steel is solid start to finish. I love that album. And he also asks, what band would you like to see live for the first time, or if they reunited? So I've never seen the Rolling Stones, so that's on my bucket list. I do want to see them before those guys croak. And if a band reunited, I'd have to go Pink Floyd. Most of you guys know I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, so they figure in a lot to these questions. Andy Pierce asks the question, who is the best live band that I've ever seen? And having just mentioned Pink Floyd, I'm going to go with Pink Floyd, at least for technical ability and perfection of performance, recreating those the sounds from the albums. But Tom Petty for jamming and improv. And then overall intensity and energy, Rat, the original lineup, I saw them and those guys blew my mind. Now, it could have just been, age and whatnot, but yeah, definitely love that. And so then what is the best support band that I've ever seen? And I've seen a lot, and there's really good ones out there, but one band that left a real impression in my mind is King's X, who opened up for AC/DC in 1991 on the Razor's Edge tour. Made me a lifelong fan of King's X going forward after that. Robbie Garcia asked the question, what is your Holy Grail album? And I really had to scratch my head on this one. I will say this, so I own everything I want to own. There's nothing on a list that I'm waiting for or hunting for. When I want an album, I search until I find it and then I get it. But of albums that are unreleased, those are my Holy Grail albums. And so Wicked Lester, which is what I consider the first Kiss album, featuring Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, recorded an album, shelved, never released. They left the band and then formed Kiss. So I'd love to get that. Cinderella and Damn Yankees both recorded albums in 1999 for the Sony Records label that were shelved and never released. It was deemed that these were not up to par for some reason. Raging Slab has 3 unreleased albums recorded at different times that were shelved where, again, the label didn't think they were up to par. Band went back in, recorded an entire new album, and that got released instead. White Tiger, the band featuring Mark St. John, former guitar player for Kiss, recorded a second album. I'd love to get a hold of that because I love the debut. And I'd really like to hear Def Leppard Hysteria, but produced by Jim Steinman. So I'd love to hear those recordings before Mutt Lange came into it. And then he also asks, name 3 songs that gave me goosebumps the first time I listened to them. And I will say, honestly, I probably can't remember the first time I heard these songs. But what I'm answering is, these still give me goosebumps today. And they can choke me up even. That's how they are. And I don't really know why. It's not memories or anything. It's just a feeling from these songs. So I got 3. Ramones, Poison Heart, In Excess, Don't Change, and Tom Petty, I Won't Back Down. And I think in one of the first 1 or 2 of my question and answer session videos, somebody asked me, what is the last song I'd ever like to hear before I die? And I answered Tom Petty, I Won't Back Down, and I stand by that. Okay, Andy H. asks if I'm into stoner rock. Yes, I am. I go way back, though, to the originators, Caius, and offshoot projects like Hermano and Unity. I never really got into Queens of the Stone Age. They were a little too glossy for me, moving into that more pop realm, just not as dirgy as the bands like Caius and stuff. James Irwin asks, do you find it hard to get into a new album by a band that hasn't released an album for 20 or 30 years? Yeah, that has certainly happened to me. I do try to approach it with first listening to an album and finding the elements that are key for that band. So vocalist, song structure, guitar lead, elements or fills, things like that. But there's plenty of them that haven't worked. And I just talked to you guys about the album that came out by the band Touch after 40 years. And while I really like the debut album because it has a real, it was buried in the 80s. I mean, it was just, full of that sound on the keyboards and everything. This one here is still an AOR classic and melodic rock masterpiece, but doesn't sound like the debut. So I listened to it as a new band, and it's really good musically, so I can enjoy it. Then there's a band like Spread Eagle, one of the sleaze rock bands from the original back in the glam metal days, released an album after 26 years, and the vocal style really defined them. And the singer is still the same guy, Ray West, but he's not singing like that, not hitting those high notes and singing in that same, sort of emotion. I don't want to call it emotional, but style. But I listened to the album multiple times, and after I could get past the fact that it didn't really sound like the first 2 albums, I was able to get into it, and I've really enjoyed the album ever since. Roxy Blue, another band from 1992, back in the day, the glam metal era. 27 years between albums, same singer and all, but doesn't sound anything like he used to sound, and the songs are completely different, and that's one I couldn't get into. And maybe the most classic one of all of these, or the biggest one, Guns N' Roses and Chinese Democracy, a 15-year gap between albums from the Spaghetti Incident to this one, or 17 years from Use Your Illusion to this one. But this one here, it still had Axl Rose, still had his vocal style, song structure was still the same. They would take multiple songs and meld them together. Epic, tunes that were on there and stuff like that, and the guitars were still amazing. So yeah, it's not as dirty and sleazy as Appetite or, Use Your Illusion, but I still found plenty of the elements in there, and I love that album. Hartmut Peter asks, what is your favorite guitar solo of all time? And I don't know if I have an answer specifically for that, but one guitar solo that always blows my mind is the Ronnie James Dio project Hearing Aid, and the song Stars has 3 lead guitarists who trade off back and forth for about 3 minutes worth of that song. It's a long song. I think it's 8 minutes long, but 3 minutes of it is just lead guitar work, and it's really, really great. Andres from Greece asks, what albums whose creators have disowned or hated the album do I love? And I've got 3 of these here. So the band Yes and their album Union, that's an album that the guitar players and other members have often said they disliked. It was just put together for marketing reasons. Kix, Cool Kids, they don't like the production on that one and the more 80s sound, but I still dig it. And Aerosmith, Just Push Play. while not their best album, I still think it's a great album and I love to go back and listen to it. It's got some real key standout songs, but Joe Perry hates that album. All right, Darren Marriott asks, if you could create your own music festival, who would play it? And this one was a really fun one. I may have to make a whole episode on this. So I picked 10 bands and I'm calling it the Forever Rock Festival. And I checked, nobody's used that one yet. And starting off, Love Hate would open this. Then it would be followed by Extreme and Winger, move into Skid Row and Great White. And I have to say, these are all bands that would be reuniting. Followed by Cinderella, Rat, Poison, then Motley Crue headlining over the top, Guns N' Roses again, original lineup for this. So the Forever Rock Festival, 10 bands, I'd pay good money to go see that. Carrie David Sadler asked, is money a factor when buying music? For the most part, no, it's not. I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty good job that allows for it, but to me, worth is all in the eye of the beholder. So if it's an album I've been searching for a very long time, I might be willing to spend more money on it than somebody else might be. My real issue, though, are the box sets and the deluxe editions that are coming out, where I used to buy all of these, but now it seems like they're kind of scraping the barrel and I don't need a bunch of live albums, especially if I've already got ones from the band. So if these come out and they actually have unreleased songs and alternate takes, a lot of studio material, I will probably buy it, but if it's just packed with live albums the way the Black Sabbath box sets are these days, I'm going to be passing on those. So that's when I do calculate in as to whether money is worth spending on it or not. And then he also asked this question, and I don't know if I've answered this before or not because someone's definitely asked it. What will I do, or what will happen to my music collection when I die? And I don't know, what I've always said though has been is I'm going to be buried with it. I've spent all this money and time and energy, and it's my love, so at least a part of it's going to be buried with me. Maybe it'll just be burned and I'll be cremated with the whole thing and I'll be a big plastic blob in the end. We'll see. Okay, Alec L asks, who are your favorite lyricists? So I kind of broke this down. Songwriters would be Jim Steinman and Desmond Child. I really love, what they do and they're able to do. Any of you guys who know who they are, would agree with me. Lyricists, though, not necessarily talking about the musical aspect, although I like all these artists, but lyrics and the storytelling, Neil Young, Bruce Springsteen, and John Bon Jovi. And do I have a favorite lyric? Yes, I do. It's better to burn out than fade away, the famous Neil Young lyric from My, Hey, Hey. So yeah, and I've got others, but yeah, those are the ones that I want to give here. Adam asks, what are my thoughts on 8-tracks? And I kind of found this to be an odd question. I don't know if Adam has a huge 8-track collection or not. I only own one 8-track and it's just out of pure curiosity, but 8-tracks, I never got because of their limited capacity, and it did create some interesting things though. The 8-track was looped, and fast forwarding and rewinding, I can't remember which it is. I think you could only fast forward, you couldn't rewind or something along those lines. But Pink Floyd Animals, because of the looping and the opening song, Pigs on the Wing, which starts it off, they couldn't have it looping and going back into it. It just wouldn't work out. So what they actually decided to do was take the two, beginning and end, and they put it together. They added a guitar solo and they turned it into a longer song. And so you've got, there's the 8-track has a different version of Pigs on the Wing than what made it onto CDs and cassettes and everything else. So that part of 8-tracks I find fascinating, and I have collected a number of these bootleg recordings where they take an 8-track and put it onto a CD so you can have it for just those reasons. Adam also asks, do I have an HD CD player? I do not. I just have a standard player. I've never really gotten into that. I understand a lot of people really talk about that, and of course the loudness wars and all that sort of stuff, and it's just never been an issue for me. All right, Rick Rivera asks, what is your opinion when an artist sells its music catalog or entire catalog to one of those music investment funds? And generally, I'm okay with it. An artist has a right to do with their stuff, their catalog, with what they see fit. I do worry that some of these artists might sell it to a company that is going to distribute it in a way or something that's going to hurt the overall, musical idea of what the artist wanted. Case in point, somebody like Neil Young, Bob Dylan, those kind of artists, but they're the ones that are doing it. And, they have found that this, whatever kind of agreements they got, that this is going to work. So I'm okay with it. I'm waiting to kind of see how this all plays out. Christopher Bull asked the question, what bands did you use? Oh, sorry. What bands did you used to not like that I do now? I've got two of them. When these bands first came out, I was not big fans of Oasis or Buck Cherry, but I am now. And what bands did I used to like that I'm not so into now? Big fan of Rob Zombie at the time when he first came out with Hellbilly Deluxe, and I loved White Zombie. But as I get these new albums, I like them, but they don't draw me in the same way that they used to. And another band is Prong. I used to really love Prong back in the early 90s. I still buy their new albums, but they just, again, haven't done much for me. Okay, this person has two initials, TT. What are your favorite hard rock finds from the 80s and early 90s? So a couple things throughout the pandemic. One was the Electric Angels, Lost in the Atlantic. Recorded in 1992. It was a lost album that was shelved at the time, that only came out a few years ago. Hunted this one down through eBay, Electric Boys, Funko Metal Carpet Ride, 1989 release, but it is the Swedish edition, and it's a different mix than what was ultimately released here in the United States and abroad. And then Freight Train Jane, which called Hallucination, 1994, which featured Jamie St. James on vocals from Black and Blue. That was a long time hunting that down kind of thing. Charlie 10 asked, do you collect Japanese import CDs? And as I mentioned up front, I started importing a lot from Japan. But yeah, I do not specifically collect them, but I do buy Japanese things when I can't get them in the US. I've got a bunch of these Yes Japanese editions, these HD CD ones, which sound fantastic. And I don't know, so I'll say this. I don't have that special CD player or whatever, but these still sound phenomenal and so much different than the original releases that I have. They just jump out at me, so I do enjoy those. And then, what album do you have the most copies of? So I had to really think about this, and I don't know if this is the case. I probably have other bands that are like this, but Def Leppard came to mind, Hysteria. I have 5 copies of that. I have a cassette. I got the original CD that I bought back in the day. I have a 2 CD deluxe edition reissue of it. I've got the deluxe box set edition of it that's like 7 CDs. And then I bought the volume 1 archive that they're putting out, where they're collecting all of their material together, and it's in there. So I've got 5 different editions of this thing. And I still go back and listen to the regular CD that's not even remastered, probably more than anything. All right, Mr. DJ Productions asks, does Record Store Day interest me at all? Yes, it certainly does. I'm specifically looking forward to Tom Petty, Angel Dream LP. But he also asks, do I like how it's handled in terms of limited quantities, overpricing, flipping, etc.? As far as helping the record store chains, yes, I'm okay with that. However they want to price it and the limited qualities that make people come out for it. But I do not like the flipping where people buy these things up and then immediately turn around and sell them on eBay. I wish that didn't happen, but unfortunately there's no real way to regulate it. Russ Davies asks, is there any genre that I just simply have no interest in? And yes, nu metal, which is, I don't know if that's really the vein that Rob Zombie has moved into, but I just can't get into it. I've tried. My sister's way into it. I get a lot of people recommending me things. It sounds good, but it just doesn't click with me. I also ask, what websites do I frequent in order to stay up on what's happening? I've got 2 really big ones that I go to a lot and a few others. Brave Words, and then another one called Blabbermouth. And if you just Google those, you'll find these. He also asks, Yankees or Mets in terms of baseball, but unfortunately I'm not a sports fan at all, so I really wouldn't pick either of those. I suppose if I had to pick one though, I would go Yankees since I live in Manhattan. Okay, what is your favorite music-centric movie? Detroit Rock City, which is a Kiss-themed movie all about these kids trying to get to a Kiss concert, and Thunderstruck, which is an AC/DC-themed movie about these kids celebrating or taking care of the last wish of one of their childhood friends who wanted to be buried at the grave of Bon Scott. All right, that's 36 questions we just covered there. We've got 4 left. We're wrapping this up. Channel-related, 2 questions. Dimitri Metalos asks the question, What time do you upload your videos? So I generally upload between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. I've mentioned this in a couple other videos. I like to wake up early. It's nice and quiet. And during that time, I also use that to upload the videos. I generally shoot my videos the day before or the evening before, like I'm doing right now. But of course, it'll get uploaded the next morning. And Adam asked the question, what kind of channels do you watch on YouTube? So I like band and artist related channels that are actually run by them, record labels, so like Frontiers Records, where they post new music videos by their artists, official music video sites, and then of course music news sites I go to. I also am a big space fan, so I visit NASA and SpaceX a lot. And I've got two personal questions here. Darlene asks, what is your birthday? I was born July 22nd, so I am a Cancer sign. And Brian Reynolds asks some work-related questions. What architect do you most admire? And it's Mies van der Rohe. He was part of the Bauhaus movement. And then what type of projects do I work on, architecturally speaking? So I do a lot of high-end residential. I'm currently renovating a townhouse that was built in 1880. Historical restoration. I'm working on a 38-story, 5-star hotel that was built in 1927. And I also do religious work. I'm working on a chapel right now that seats 500. And there you go, guys. That's the question and answer session number 3. Hopefully you enjoyed these 40 questions that I just ran through. I know we went on here. This is a 26-minute long video, but I hope you guys still enjoyed it nonetheless. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. You can go ahead and start leaving questions for your next question and answer session. Of course, I will put out a call at that time when I hit the next milestone. And again, thank you to all the subscribers. Thank you to all the people that watch. And thank you to everyone that comments and interacts and keeps this great musical discussion going. Take care. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye, everyone.